Once again, and yesterday I had a lot of trouble with my live stream getting it to work properly. I think I've solved that problem, and as I say that, I look at my, okay, I think we're good. If it freezes, then I'm just gonna, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I think I've got it figured out. If you are wondering and you have the same problem at home when you do your trumpet practice live streams, it was just I needed to plug the camera directly into the computer instead of through the little USB hub. It was just getting overloaded and it couldn't figure out what to do with that information. So anyway, I promised yesterday in the live stream that I was going to talk about a technique that I've been exploring to help people with their flexibility and to help myself as well. And I do want to do that, but I also want to talk generally about flexibility. So what is it? Well, it's a lot of things. It's really what you're looking to do when you want, like, let's say lip trills or very fast lip slurs, which you'll see in all of my videos, right? How do you do that? Well, it's a coordination issue, right? A lot of times we're not putting enough air into the horn, and so our lips have to do things. A lot of times we're putting too much air into the horn, and so our lips can't kind of hang on. Sometimes we don't use our tongue position. We just put it all the way at the bottom of our mouth. And while that's a pretty good starting position, a lot of times for medium and low notes and very loud notes, we need to use it to get around the horn. But thinking too much about any one of these things can really be damaging. It can really halt your progress because you're thinking too much about the parts and not the results, right? But it's nice when we have exercises that can help us do that. So one of them is the Schlossberg book. So before we get into the cool, like, special teams technique, we're just going to do a little bit of Schlossberg stuff. I don't have the Schlossberg book here, so I might be making it up a little bit as I go. But there's a bunch of books. Even if we don't get it exactly right, we're not going to say, oh, well, Gabriel, you don't understand it. No, the point is that we do some kind of slur, some kind of flexibility exercise with some kind of goal. And if we can do those things, then we should be learning better how to have that coordination, and then we just have to maintain that as we do more complicated things. So I'm just going to start here with Schlossberg number 7, which I believe I can do, and I do it a little bit differently than the book says. You have to follow, when you do the Schlossberg book, you have to follow all the instructions, and one of those instructions almost always is slow or slowly. Everybody does the Schlossberg book way too fast, and there are parts that should be fast, but most of them should be exceedingly slow. They should be as slow as you need them to be to make them really effective, right? So I should also pull up the chat. I don't know how long I'm going to go. I wasn't planning on really doing a lot, but I realized that my dad probably will get a notification that I'm on, and then he might come on and want to talk about stuff, and you know, we could always use his expertise, right? So, and his gifts, when you give, I still don't have it up. It's down there, but that decibel meter, I also realized I can use the decibel meter right on the computer. It tells me what my gain is for the microphones. Anyway, so okay, so Schlossberg number 7, if you're following along at home, it's a half note, and then another half note that's repeated, the same note, with a taper on it, and then slur up to, well, in this case, it's 2 Gs and a C with a fermata over it. And that C is softer. And so what you're wanting to do here is obviously follow all those directions, right? But what you're really doing is you're taking an airstream, right? Let's say it's 35 air, right? Of no units, just 35 of it, right? And you're going to keep 35 air all the way through, but you're going to shape it more and more so that it goes faster, but also gets smaller. So you're still using 35 of it, but you're making it go through a smaller passage, so the sound will get smaller and the sound will also get softer, but you'll also gain compression, right? And that's what we're looking for, is that ability to make compression without just blowing harder or tightening our lips. So we're not moving our lips really, right? We'll allow them to maybe wrap around a smaller airstream because we're making the airstream smaller, but we're not going to tighten them purposefully, right? So basically we're keeping the lips vibrating, we're making the airstream smaller, and we're blowing the same air. Okay, let's try that. Great, right? And you might get a double buzz because, well, we're used to putting a little more pressure or not enough pressure, or maybe the lips still come together a little too much. That's fine, right? You can clean it up on the next one. And the Schlossberg book works really well if you just say, well, of course I'm going to sound bad on the first couple of them, but I'll figure it out eventually, right? And you just do it a lot. Let's do another one. And you can tell I take the middle one out of time a little bit so that I want it to just get smaller and smaller and smaller until it can't be the first note anymore, and it just automatically has to crack up a partial, right? And then I don't really care what that note sounds like at first. I just want it to be for free. And if you're wondering how to shape the air, right, you can hear it's getting way sharper as I make it smaller. I'm allowing for that. I'm not trying to hold it back. We could try holding it down as well, and we'll get a little bit of a gap in between the partials, and that's okay in this case. But I'm just moving my tongue up and forward, right? So I'm saying, like, if you want to try this at home, you can say toy, right? Toy. But it's more complicated than that. You also want to make sure you say the with the sides of your tongue. So say the, then say the, but don't finish. So you're going, right? Like a cat hiss more than a snake hiss, not but right? That's what we're looking for. And if we have that side tongue position, and then we make sure that the middle is further down, sort of like a U shape, right? I can't do this very well. Sort of like a U shape, then we're cutting off the whole bottom of the mouth so that the air goes through the mouth instead of just kind of all over, right? And that'll also keep our cheeks from puffing out a little bit more, and it'll direct it towards the corners where we actually are starting to hold, okay? So we'll do a couple more of these. When you do this right, it should feel like magic, like the final note is you're not even playing trumpet. So there's lots of these in the Schlossberg book. There's basically three things going on in the Schlossberg book. One of them is tongue position. That's what we're learning now. All of the ones that go up and get softer or go down and get louder are working on your tongue position while you keep your air moving the same. Don't forget that because that's very important, but it's helping you learn how to move your tongue either into the airstream to make it more compressed or out of the way of the airstream to make it less, to lower the compression, and that will also make the volume greater, right? Then you have the opposite of that, the ones that get higher and get louder, and the ones that go down and get softer. And those are really, you could argue working on two different things, but in general, lower and softer is working on holding. I have to keep everything working. So if I do this exercise, if you keep going in number 7, it starts to go the other way. Oop. You can see it's really physically hard. I have to really maintain, and you kind of have to guide it down. That was a little overwrought. I need to be a little more gentle with it. So we'll do a couple more. And we'll get into why the special technique that I've I've sort of been playing around with will help us work on that one. And then the only other thing that the Schlossberg book, we're talking just about the beginning, the long note drills, and sort of the warm-up area of the Schlossberg book, all of those ones, right? The only other thing that it tells you to do is use your air alone. So these are the ones that go up and get louder, and especially a lot louder. When they get a lot louder, you're going to have to push more air through the same shape, and it's going to open the aperture but create more and more compression as well. And so, and those ones, I'll just make one up that's kind of like those. And those tend to be easier for us to work on because we're used to using our air to go up and taking away air to go down. And you really don't want to feel that sensation of starving for air as you go down, but that it's staying the same, but you're making a smaller shape. And we already have the tongue position to work on that. So, and the holding to work on that as well, right? So that's the thing. And then he asks you to combine those things in different ways. And you have to remember, too, that the Schlossberg book is a compilation of other people's lessons, little slips of paper that all kind of worked on different people's problems, but all similar things, right? So you can sort of pick and choose which ones really help you. I really like, obviously, number 7, number 13 is another good one. Numbers, I think it's 38. Is this one. I like to play on the high E if I do it with students so that we have a nice little major third at the end, right? Anyway, and you can see I'm not forcing anything to happen, so some of my notes are really crummy, but I'm working on just really trusting my air. This is the same air for the loud low octave as it is for the higher soft octave of each pair, right? No difference in the air, only difference in the shape. And the embouchure has to adjust to that, and so that's why you sometimes get crummy stuff, because it made a mistake, or your shape wasn't right, or you didn't actually keep the same air, right? But who knows what it's going to be? Really, what you want to do is just do the exercise so that it eventually feels easy and sounds exactly what it's like, what it's supposed to sound like. So, okay, that's all just Schlossberg book stuff. Then, of course, you have the page 44 of the Arbenz book, number 22. So if you have a new Arbenz book, it's page 42, number 22. But these are faster and faster two-note slurs. And that's where a lot of people get stuck because they can't do the sextuplets or they can't do the 16th notes at the end of that exercise at a tempo where they can do the whole thing in one breath. And you should do it in one breath. It has a big phrase mark over it. And that's because you can't do it slowly if you have to do it in one breath, right? You got to do it in one breath, so you got to get going. And that's important because otherwise you learn kind of the wrong thing from it. You can learn the subdivision slower with multiple breaths, but that's really not what it's working on. It's trying to get you closer and closer to a lip trill. So that's what we're going to work on now. And I'll show you how I sort of discovered it for myself, and I'm sure there's a book that shows you this, but I was trying to determine, can you do trills other than whole step and half step trills, right? So this is off topic for maybe 3 minutes, but I'll show you what I mean. So can you do a trill that's not a whole step? Well, let's start with a half step and a whole step, right? Okay, we can do those. And if you've never seen my trill tones before, C to D trill and really drilling it so that it's never going to be a B flat or an E or any other notes, that's something you got to work on in the first place, right? But, okay, what if let me turn this down a little bit. It's getting a little close to the edge. What if I want to do a trill that's bigger than that? What about a minor third trill? Yeah, you can do it. And but it really is harder for major thirds. So if I go down a little bit, right, and if I do that major trill, it's a lip trill, right? I can't do that as a valve trill because it's a different slot. And the valve version of an E, so if I do C to E trill, right? If I don't want to do it as a lip trill and I want to do it as a valve trill, maybe third valve or 1 and 2, I'm going to run into the problem that C sharp is on the way and also that valve combination. It is possible to sort of skip one and sort of, get the coordination figured out, but it's really, really tricky and doesn't work very well. But if I go all the way down to G, I don't have any notes that are second valve in between G and B natural. But watch what happens. I get this kind of in-between sound that I couldn't solve for a little while. So I just said, well, I guess I'm not capable of doing major third trills. I'm only capable of doing minor third trills. And that felt like an accomplishment, that I could really do minor third trills, most of the range of the trumpet that were really clear and not any other notes. So, okay, fine. And then I said, well, what about lip trills? Because that was, maybe that's the problem, that because I can do a major third lip trill. And so, if I can do a major third lip trill, what about a perfect fourth lip trill? So let's check that out. So I'm sort of getting it, right? But it's really, if you listen carefully, it has the same problem as the valved major third trill, which is that I never really actually end up in the C note, right? I end up in the slot for the C, but I don't actually end up hearing a C come out. If you think you heard one, go back and listen. It's because we know what it's supposed to sound like, and we know what a lip trill sounds like, and we know what the trumpet is capable of, right? And all those things combined make our brain think, oh yeah, that's a perfect fourth lip trill, but it's not. It's a lip trill into the slot that would be a perfect fourth, but that never makes it. And that's because it's too far, right? By the time I get there, I need to go back the other direction. Or when I get halfway there, it's time to go back the other direction to get back to the first note. And because the bottom note, right, it's very hard to hold above a slot, so you kind of just end up hitting that slot. And if you can do your Schlossberg 7 well enough, that you can really easily pull yourself out of the slot towards the top, right? Then you don't have to hit it super hard. So how do you figure this out? Well, and it'll help us on our regular lip trills, right? Because then the slots are so close together, I can in fact do it. But sometimes it feels hard to figure out how to do those, and I feel like I'm just lipping them around, right? Or I have to push my air and then wait for it to come back down. We know those aren't the right ways, but what is a good way? Well, here's the exercise. So you're going to bend the top note down to the bottom note and try to stay on the ridge. So the way I'm thinking about it is there's a cusp between the two slots, right? This side is a C and this side is a G, right? And that's the whole slot. And I want to be right here on the top of the edge so that if I move my tongue a little bit one way, it's a G. And if I move my tongue the other way, it's somewhere in the C slot, right? Somewhere over here. And I just want to be able to really... So it's a combination of holding and tongue position and air. If you back off your air, it won't work. If you don't hold your lips, then you won't get a bend, you'll get a crack, right? I can sort of do that. Don't do this. Where you can't hear the note bend, you just hear it sort of fade away and get to the double buzz, and then you crack down. You're not putting your air into it anymore. You're backing your tongue position off and your air off together, right? So instead, rush your air past, like you were doing lip bends on long tones, right? Rush your air through, let your corners come in, and then you can find the tongue position is dropping the right way. Usually I feel like it's coming in like an airplane, right? Like landing. I know that that's probably not real, but that's what it feels like to me. And so, but if you can get a really glissy bend, then you'll find that spot where it wants to crack off, and then you just have to keep it from hitting really hard, and you'll find it, right? It's, again, don't think too much about how to do it. Think more about just making it happen one way or another, and then you can pay attention once you start to get it, right? You can hear that's already like unstable enough to be a lip trill if I can just let it go a little bit, right? Now, we don't need a lip trill on C and G, so let's try it in a place where we actually might use a lip trill. Like, I don't know, how about E to C, right? That's starting to get towards the top, towards the end of Arbin's number 22 that we talked about earlier. So let's see if we can get that. Or even better, let's start at Arbin's page 44, number 22, number 1, right? The G and the B. It's right there. Now that's not the exercise, but those are the notes way faster than I'll ever need them during the exercise, right? So if I can use my embouchure that way, remember the feeling of the way that especially the lips kind of come out and in, right? So I know out and in, stupid. Come out this way and in the corners, right? And the tongue position is also making room for these notes, but it's also finding an arch that wants to play both of them, right? So that if I move it just a twitch one way or another, it's the other note, right? So now we can try to do the exercise that way. And that's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's gotten me a lot closer than I was before. So now we can just take this into other places that we need a lip trill. So let's work our way up to the high range exercise I do on all my warm-ups. And let's say, okay, that was B and G. Now let's try D above the staff and B natural. So that's the same fingering, but just a partial higher. And it should be a little easier because that's also a minor third instead of a major third. Okay, that one worked even better, right? And I was getting a little weird artifact on my lip because my lip is used to doing a little bit of work all the time, and it was trying to do that work, and my tongue position, my air was saying, no, you just relax. You don't have to do anything. Now, not actually relax, right? It's very firm, actually, but it doesn't need to tighten and loosen, right, like it's used to doing. And so as it was trying to do that, it was saying, no, just stay where you are. It's fine. Okay, let's try. We could try the next one, which would actually technically be F and D, like the same fingering, but it's a real low F. So instead, let's switch to E and C sharp, right? That'll be a little bit higher for us and get us a little bit closer. And then we can do D and F like this, and that'll be better. Oh, sorry. And I want to take a little rest because it is very strenuous to do. At first, I'm just finding like a little piece of the coordination I need, not the whole thing. And so, and I skipped the exercise because, well, okay, we know what the exercise sounds like now, but really what I'm interested in is getting to that lip trill, and then I can hopefully trust that. And when I go for the whole step lip trill at the top of the staff, I'm noticing as I'm doing this exercise, bending it down, that the back of my tongue is actually quite high. But once I understand how the physical feeling of getting that embouchure, I call it embouchure posture, right? Then I can move my tongue to a more advantageous position, blow a little air through that's a little bit more air, a little bit harder air, and I don't need the back of my tongue to be quite so high because I'm not doing the bend. I'm now doing just the lip trill. And at that point, you've taught yourself the embouchure here and the position of the tongue in the front maybe, right? And the way that the air needs to flow through. And so then you can change your tongue position a little bit if you can maintain those other things. And that's the final sort of step, right? But it would be nice if we could just get these fast slurs. It also works great for Vince slurs. We can do that, I guess. Well, that makes sense because it's got a lip trill at the end. The only thing that's hard is the bottom note you have to really change your tongue position for, otherwise you end up dropping your jaw, which is also okay, or puckering too much and then it gets a sort of funny sound. But okay, so now we're ready for the top notes that lead us into the high range, right? So here we go. And so why does that all work? Well, we've got the tongue position that'll allow us to sort of be right on the edge of one slot. And if we can maintain the embouchure here and the tongue position that keeps that going, then if we blow more air over that same shape, it's going to want to rocket up to the next partial every time and get louder, right? And so then the high F sharp feels just like a little more air version of the F sharp on top of the staff. And again, it takes maybe years to gain all the coordination necessary, but this bending exercise, I think, is the missing link for a lot of people who have been struggling with this for a long time. So I wanted to share it with you today. It's been a half an hour, and I think I've done a pretty exhaustive version of it leading up to the high range exercise. So if you have trouble with my high range exercises that I do in all my warm-ups, this might be the video that solves it for you, and in which case, great. And if it doesn't, send me an email. Tell me why it doesn't work. I'd be happy to troubleshoot with you and try to figure it out. But anyway, that's all for this impromptu sort of note bending, flexibility, high range exercise. And I hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you in the next one.